afternoon. Welcome to the April 9th, 2024 work session of the Mayor and City Council of Hagerstown. All right, first up, we have a proclamation, National Poetry Month. Can I get Derek Williams to meet me over here? National Poetry Month, April 2024. Whereas to support American poets at all of their careers and also the appreciation of contemporary poetry, in 1996, the Academy of American Poets established the month of April as National Poetry Month, the largest literary celebration in the world. And whereas poetry enhances and enriches our lives, fosters critical thinking, discipline, creativity, self-expression, and problem-solving skills, has inspired other artists in the field of music, theater, film, dance, and the visual arts. And whereas National Poetry Month seeks to highlight the extraordinary legacy and ongoing achievement of American poets, introduce Americans to the pleasures and benefits of reading poetry, bring poets and poetry to the public in immediate and innovative ways, and make poetry an important part of children's education. And whereas the theme of 2024 is standing on the shoulders of giants. Now therefore, on behalf of the Mayor and City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2024 as National Poetry Month and call upon all citizens to celebrate, support, and promote poetry in our city.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Just a little something.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you guys for having me here. This is not the first time. Well, just to introduce myself, my name is Derek Williams. I'm a Christian hip hop artist, and I'm the co-founder of Smileback Records, which is a Christian hip hop and positive alternative label with the goal of bringing 100% clean music to Hagerstown, and with the focus of youth development and artist development. So I just want to thank you guys for that.
Oh, Eric's, yeah.
Picture time.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Good song.
Thank you.
We should have the mayor's picture on one of those pop second things like we've had.
Next, FY 2025 budget review with Michelle Hepburn, Chief Financial Officer, and Brooke Garver, Accounting and Budget Manager.
Like the opposite.
Oh, my gosh.
They're more optimistic than I am, right? Hello. We're all excited to
Or
be
they've all
here.
been to the Broad Axe for the last 3 hours and they've decided to.
Don't tell on everybody, Scott, man. Jeez. All right, so this evening, Brooke isn't here, obviously. So if I have to pause to grab a water, I'm gonna let Scott. Scott can just tell you numbers and things.
Yep. Things.
All right, so hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to look through a little bit of their budget book and have some questions and thoughts. But primarily this evening, I want to take a quick look at some information for the general fund. And we're just going to get started. We had some references and page numbers listed in our memo, for this evening. So we're going to start in the very first section, which is the overview section. It contains, we're going to go to pages 6 and 7. It's one of the first places in the budget book that we talk about property taxes and real estate taxes. It is several other places throughout the book, and it's laid out very differently in each of the places. However, it is very important. It is one of our primary revenue sources for the general fund. So page 6 and 7, we talk about the assessable base and the property tax rate. The constant yield notice that we receive from the State Department of Assessment and Taxation. So again, just to walk through, what happens with people's real property is there is a separate agency through the state of Maryland, the Department of Assessment and Taxation. They have assessors, and those staff and assessors make the assessed value judgments on property, on real property. I'm not talking about personal. Then they load all that information, and an area in Maryland is reassessed every 3 years. We are now in fiscal year 25 will be our second year. So all of the major reassessments occurred the previous December. But that agency does the assessments, they load the information into a file, and then the cities and the counties pull that information. We pull the information into our financial software system, and we take the value, it multiplies it by the rate that we set and establish. That's the portion that we control here at the city of Hagerstown, and the bill is generated. So I just wanted to take a minute to stop because I think that that's very important. Sometimes I don't think people realize that the city doesn't actually do the assessments and set the rate and do everything on the bill. A lot of that stuff is set separately from us. Anyway, so the State Department of Assessment and Taxation sent the constant yield notice. And what they do is they, every December through February, and on February 14th, we get a constant yield memo, and they do a calculation that says, based on where we think you're going to be assessed value in the next fiscal year, minus appeals, abatements, and they do an estimate for a whole lot more. If you do not change your rate, this is what's going to happen. Or the other portion and the other pieces of the constant yield memo says, in other words, to maintain the exact same dollar revenue, this is what your new rate would be, right? So when we received ours in February of 2024, our new constant yield tax rate is 0.941 per $100 of assessed values. If we maintain our current rate, and our current rate is 1.002, we discussed that last time, and that is in our proposed budget, according to the estimates by SSTAT, that means the city of Hagerstown would have an additional 2.1 million. Again, it's important. All these are estimates, unknowns. But fiscal year 25 is the second year. I've included a chart. We've included a chart on page 6 towards the bottom, where we list current home values in increments. We start at 75,000, and we show what an annual payment is for the tax rate that we have in place and a monthly one. One of the things that we added last fiscal year, we didn't have it at the time we included it in the book, but I think it came out of one of our review sessions, was, all right, Michelle, if assessment goes up, for every 1% change in assessed value for somebody, what is that impact? So if your home was previously valued at $200,000, for every 1% assessed value change, it means a $20.04 difference on an annual basis for a property owner, or $1.67 per month, depending on how you pay your taxes. The next page, page 7, we do a breakout, and this chart was again added at the request of a council person because this gives us some good information and tells us items. But one of the things is, all right, for every single dollar that we receive, how is it spent? Just in the general fund without looking at the capital. And if you take a look, it's a nice little pie chart. General government will start, it's the blue slice, it's the 13 cents. And as we go through the budget book, I'll show you what items make up general government, but mayor, council, city administrator, legal, accounting, information technology, engineering, human resources, but I'll point out where you can see those. That's what's considered general government. Next is public safety, and it's 50 cents. This 50 cents for public safety includes fire, police, code admin, and traffic. Highways and streets is next, and it's 5 cents. It's a little green block. Waste collection and disposal trash is 8 cents. So just to stop for a second, general government is 13 cents, public safety is 50. So 50 is a good bit, but general government, and then 8 cents. So trash, what it cost us to do our contract to have the trash done and maintained here is 8 cents for every dollar. I won't bore you with the details, you can kind of look at the rest, but just to give you a feel, we do provide that information because I know it is a question that people are asked. I did not include it in the memo, but the very next page is ARPA. And we do a lot of meetings, quarterly meetings on ARPA, but I do want to just take a minute in this chart. When we look at the chart, it's very small, I apologize. But the first column, or the fourth column, I guess I should say, would be the 3 years of actual spend, fiscal year 21, 22, 23. The very bottom, you can see it's 6.2 million. Fiscal year 24, estimated actual grand total, 9.3 million. And then in the fiscal year 25 proposed budget, you're gonna see another 4.3 million. Just to point out, in the fiscal year 25 proposed budget, underneath the general fund, those first 3 numbers that you see are the only amounts that we have on the operational side. The rest of the general fund, and you're gonna see within the capital improvement projects.
No, go ahead.
That's okay.
So the 3 amounts in the bottom over the 3-year period equals the 20.4 million.
Actually, it's just shy, it's about,
Okay.
it's almost $600,000 shy. We do have it allocated, we do not yet have account numbers established for some things because they haven't moved forward enough. But when they do, we'll add the expense and we'll add the revenue, but only after it's brought to this body as a consent agenda form and we've got formal vote and blessing. But yes, it is all allocated, and as of yesterday's meeting that we had at the director's level, we talked about the importance of anybody who currently has an allocation, and if it is not encumbered by June 30, come July, opening the floodgates, and whomever else has had priority items in to us between now and then, that we will be looking to reallocate and get it utilized and encumbered, because we do not want to be waiting.
Yep.
Can't be waiting until October to try that process, it won't work, it's too long of a process. Okay, next page, page 9. We're gonna talk about general fund reserves. And again, this is just general fund. So we talked about the general fund on the real property, then we talked about ARPA, which was citywide. Now I'm gonna come back to just general fund. The very first chart at the top is a nice visual on 5 years of actual information of how we ended on fund balance in the general fund. You can see the unassigned, which is a figure that everybody focuses on, and it is the basis of our general fund balance reserve. So when you look at the unassigned fund balance compared to our total operating expense in fiscal year 23, for example, we ended at 39.6% of the expenses, and that was just about 4.7 when it looks at number of months of expenses on hand. Then we include in that chart what our policy is, and our policy thresholds is a percentage of operating expenses is 17%, and the number of months is 2. This is important. We do one other place go ahead and estimate what fiscal year 25 is going to look like, but it's really, it is a moving target because of where we might end the year, but also any of the items that we might have encumbered that would take money away out of the unassigned. The bottom half of the chart is important, I think, for Mayor and Council, just so that you can see at a glance before we get throughout the rest of the book of where we have allocated our general fund balance reserves, where we've recommended utilizing it, because again, it's part of our policy. We will not utilize general fund balance reserves for ongoing recurring operational items. So in the fiscal year 25 budget, 1.6 are items that we have already approved through other budget cycles. We just haven't finished those projects, and as they keep moving, we keep moving the funding sources with it. So 1.6 across 4 items. City Hall, and that would be for the first floor remodel once customer service is relocated over into the new City Hall annex, right? Then we had the Steam Engine Museum, and the 137,000 there is for the restoration of a locomotive in a pavilion. The next two together jointly, the 500,000 and the 890,000, are both within the fire department, looking at acquisition of some land and also temporary relocation for the admin staff. And then the bottom is additional, what wasn't approved in the prior budget, but we did talk about when I was here, I believe in December or January, and I said that I wanted permission to utilize some of fiscal year '23, 600,000 to be exact, towards fiscal year '25, and I've applied them in two areas. One is a brand-new CIP that we're doing for the police department, and that is for safety technology, and it's, when we look at the CIPs, which may be in 2 weeks, we might get to it this evening. But there's a different plan, and they are going to actually do it in different phases on the technology side, and the camera expansion is the first. And so this is actual expansion of camera program. The second is public safety radios, and this would be for the fire department. We need to upgrade the radio infrastructure, which is a county radio infrastructure. So those are the two areas where I have utilized or proposed to utilize the 600,000 from fiscal year '23 surplus. Going to jump.
Is there going to be more detailed information on that radio program?
Okay, so one of the things that we do in this chart, in the middle, it says capital project number, and it has a 45-C0849. If you go to your,
Yeah, but I mean, are you going to specifically refer back to these when you get to that point?
well, we can, yes.
If you would.
Yes, and if not, when we get to reviewing the capital, we can stop on any of the detail sheets that you have questions on.
I mean, I only ask because, and we'll get to it when we
Projects.
get to that point, but in the past couple months, I've heard several county staff, or at least some county staff, articulate that they're covering the cost of all of that, and I'd like to understand more of that when we get to that point. So if you could make a note, and we can talk about it then.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I'll also make sure that Chief and our Assistant Deputy Fire Chief Hopkins, that they can both be present to answer if you have technical questions, because that will be outside my forte.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, we're going to flip the page to page 38. So in keeping with this evening, in our review of the general fund, I'm going to keep us within the same section, which is section 1 for right now. Again, this is, the overview section has a little bit of everything, but I want to look, these are probably 2 or 3 of some of my favorite charts in the book, just because of the layout and how summarized and the way that you can see the information. The first, on page 38, is revenues. And so we have a breakdown of all the general fund revenue categories, and we include 3 different time periods. Fiscal year '24, which is our current fiscal year budget, our fiscal year '24 estimated actual, where we think we're going to be by June 30, which is hard to believe, 2 months away. And then last, what we're proposing in our fiscal year '25 budget. So when we look at these categories, first, in fiscal year '24 budget, current revenue was at 61 million, and then if we jump to fiscal year '25 budget, it's just shy of 63.1. That's a 3.3% increase, which is a great trend for us to have. I will say there's been years where it's not been that close.
So this percent change column is between the first 2 columns.
The percent changes, the majority of all the percent changes throughout the budget book compare the fiscal year '25 budget to the fiscal year '24 budget.
Budget or
Budget to budget.
estimated, okay, budget to budget.
Budget to budget.
So earlier you said that SSTAT's
Assess value.
content, the yield advice was 6.5%,
Yes,
and here it says 6.9%.
that's correct. So we are in year 2, and when you look at when we look here at property tax revenue, this line is going to include a couple things not on SSTAT's constant yield notice. One is pilots. We have a handful of pilot agreements that we do, payment in lieu of taxes. And we actually charge three of our utility funds, electric, water, wastewater. They give us the pilot. But then we also have pilot arrangements with the Hagerstown Housing Authority and C.W. Brooks, which is also part of the Hagerstown Housing Authority, Liberty, and Bethel Gardens. Separate from the pilot agreements, the other thing that's included in property tax revenue that is not included in SSTAT's constant yield is our corporate personal property tax rate. So total revenue here is showing just 40.3, maybe a little over 4 million of that is what we are estimating for personal property. But overall, the trends have been SSTAT's constant yield notice, what they provide us. They are very conservative in what they are looking at as appeals. And even though I, as the city administrator will attest, I tend to stay as close to their projections as possible, but we have been considerably higher in our recent years. And this is year 2. So in year 2.
As it relates to appeals.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So basically-
And we've had some growth with annexation,
So
sorry.
basically, you're saying, based on recent historical trends, you expect the constant yield to be higher. So in other words, you expect the city to take in more than the state is estimating.
Yes.
Okay.
And that this line also encompasses a couple other things.
But we don't take that for granted.
That's correct. So on the property tax revenue line of 40.3, a council member at this table has often said and referred to this line, we have had many years where this number has not really changed or fluctuated much. And they would compare this line to when we start looking at the expenses, the growth here compared to the growth on the salary and benefits, because property tax revenue accounts for 66.2 of all of our current revenue. And when I say current revenue, I'm not comparing that to the 63.1. I am comparing that to the 63.1 minus the use of the fund balance, because that's not current revenue. That's money we already had and that we've banked. If you compare the property tax revenue of 40.3 to grand total revenue, it still represents 63.8. So by far, the absolute largest share of all of our revenue in the state of Maryland. Municipalities really don't have much authority to generate or create new tax revenue streams. So this is very important that this path grows, because as you will see on the expense side, our salaries and wages are by far our largest component when we get to the expenditure side.
And when you do this calculation, I think you said earlier, it's, the SSTAT's constant yield is based on their numbers in and around December of last year, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. So as more economic development occurs, and it's trending up in Hagerstown right now, you're not yet taking that into consideration, right? So, when a new $100 million project comes online, or, and those taxes start, or, a $40 million, logistics facility, comes online, those are not in these numbers yet.
Actually, they are.
They are, okay.
So SSTAT makes an estimate by the information in the permits and other things. So like Kathy Marr and her group have been very good. If we have an annexation and process where we think is going to be done and effective by the next fiscal year, they are sending them emails, they're sending them copies of the resolutions and ordinances so that we can be accounting for that. So they do their best to put that in, and they account for a lot of that in their half-year growth.
Okay.
Then, if you look at their constant yield memo, they have a line where they adjust what they think is going to come through in the way of abatements and appeals and reductions.
Okay.
Now, that isn't to say that, they have it in here, they think the building's coming, it's currently valued, here's where they think it may be, and then when they actually send somebody out and they, get all the permits, that they don't assess it for substantially higher, and that's a great thing for us. We want that. We want that to be the case versus putting too much revenue in, getting our tax file in July, and being so far short that we have to start making adjustments immediately in the other direction. So, when we look at these, all these different categories, property tax revenue I already shared is by far the largest, and I gave you the percentage, just for informational purposes. Income and other taxes, that is,
I'm just thinking, go ahead.
that's our second largest category of revenues, and it's about 11.2%. So you can kind of see what a huge difference between first and second. And in income and other taxes, it's not just a single item, but it encompasses, and I can show you when we get to the general revenue section, where it breaks out. There's almost for every single line here, there'll be a sheet that breaks it down a little bit more. But that includes our state income withholding, it includes admissions and amusement tax, hotel motel. It also includes our brand-new revenue stream for sales tax with cannabis, which in fiscal year '25 budget is $64,000, based on 1 quarter received of $16,000 so far in fiscal year '24. The next biggest revenue category in the general fund is charges for current services at 9.4%. And that charges for current services are a host of things. And again, we'll look at those when we get to that section. But on this page, at the bottom, we pick and select a handful of items, and we try to look at the items that are changing the largest. So property tax revenue is 6.9% higher fiscal year '25 budget to fiscal year '24. That is because it is our second year of our triennial assessment, and for the first time in many, many years when we had our evaluation, it was very positive in nature, and the caps came into play. So because there are caps and phase-ins, and it's capped at 5%, we are expecting to continue to see strong growth in our second year. Next, intergovernmental revenues, when you look at it, it is decreasing year over year by 58.2%. And that intergovernmental revenues is really, it's all grants, federal and state. The biggest reason for the decrease is the fluctuation in the goal that we will have ARPA utilization much lesser in fiscal year '25, because we're gonna have less. The biggest difference there is on the nonprofit side. If you remember, we did about $960,000 for nonprofits. We have that in our estimated annual for fiscal year '24, so it wouldn't repeat in '25. Reason for the decrease.
Do you know, how do you feel that we have the opportunity to enhance intergovernmental revenues, especially federal revenues, once the ARPA program and the other kind of COVID era related programs, and again, because, I haven't been here the whole 4 years, is that something that's been looked at, or is that something we should be investigating?
So as opportunities become available and staff know, it's evaluated. Each of the departments kind of evaluate that if they got the resources to actually accomplish those projects. For instance, engineering has, I'm gonna say the wrong abbreviations, but SS4A. What we're doing there first is we had to develop a plan. So that federal grant is one that's in the operational side. A lot of times when we get federal grants, they are not on this general fund, they're not on the operational side, they're actually on the project side.
Okay.
So with it, we are planning for the next phase, because once we get the plan, we had to have the plan before we could actually apply for additional dollars to move forward.
But in some cases, we don't know what we don't know.
And we do not typically, we typically do not include grants in our budget in the out years if they are uncertain.
Okay.
The goal would be that if you're getting a grant, you're adding expense, but you're adding a grant revenue to cover the expense. Except for when you get to some of the projects, you'll see that. Charges for current services is increasing by 28.7%, which seems like a lot. One of the largest driving factors there is our revenue for trash. And just as a reminder, we approved a new contract that's going into place with our vendor starting July, and it included an increase in rates, an increase the cost of services for us, and we also at that time had discussed increasing the rates. So rates are gonna go from $55 a quarter to $73 a quarter, and that's the reason that you see one of the driving reasons for the increases there. Next, interest on investments has a very crazy percentage, and that's literally because of the current interest market and interest not declining as originally forecasted. We went, this really, our cash balance across the entire city has been fairly constant. So the interest that we were seeing reflecting growth over year over year is because we are finally able to invest back in CDs that are 4 and 5%. Last but not least, appropriated use of fund balance is decreasing in half. These again are one-time utilization, and we talked about the things that we were utilizing the 2.2 million for.
So, if you look at pages 38 and 39, you go back to page 7 as it applies to the chart. How do you come up with the 50% for public safety? What figure are you applying one to the other to get that 50%?
So the dollars here is how we're spending them. So
Okay.
that's the dollar that we're getting in. We're comparing the 50 cents to our spend and not our revenue on the expense side. So might be easier.
So if I go to page 38 and 39, and you have public safety sort of separated out
Yes,
onto its own, and you have roughly 29 million for that particular combined expense. What are you comparing that to come up with 50%?
okay. It might be easier, I'm just gonna jump us for just a second. Might be easier to look at section 2, page 1, because public safety, on the spend, public safety there is the public safety as it's defined, which includes police, fire, code, and signal.
Okay,
And what it should be doing is looking at departmental's expense and any direct revenue that is in those
Okay.
departments.
yeah,
Right.
because I'm coming up with a higher figure, but I'm assuming it's offset by revenues.
Direct revenue
To
expenses,
come into
sorry
those
about that.
departments that are
Yes,
associated with public safety.
right.
Okay,
Because we're
Alright.
trying to say, of the amount that they do not get direct revenue
Yeah, I got
wise,
you.
for every dollar that we get in your real estate tax, how are we utilizing
Alright,
that?
and so you
Because
did, each of those sections of the pie chart are offset
by their
by revenue that
Yeah.
comes in that's not associated with combined tax.
correct.
Okay,
Because when we get real estate
I-
revenue, it's not associated to any one
Right.
area, whereas,
no, I think that's fair.
fire gets a Senator Amos grant,
Right.
police gets some security services, and they have a police aid for
Right.
protection, they got some other revenue sources. So yes.
Okay,
So what's left that is not being directly supported would have to come from our property tax.
okay.
So it is hard to see that chart to any one area. Good question, though, thank you. Helping me clarify it. Page 39, we're gonna look at expenses, and here we're looking at them by the different areas in the departments that many are familiar with. And we do here, because it's our chart in our categories, when we define public safety, where we combine them at the top, is what we typically, when we sit at the table here and talk about public safety, is police and fire. And you see that that's 29.3 million for fiscal year 25 budget, compared to total expenditures in the general fund of 63.1. So, by far and large, they're the largest percent of expenses, at 46.4% of all expenditures. The second largest one, come 3/4 of the way down, is the waste collection and disposal, and it is 7.7% of our total expenses. So the 4.8 compared to the 63.1. I'm just pointing that out. On the charges for services, on the revenue side, it was revenue source 3, and that had the income coming in. On the expense side, one of the things that we're spending, right? Number 3 is highway, streets, and signals, and that is 5.9%, 3.7 million. And it also includes snow, CMG, everything that you would think of underneath the public works umbrella. So this chart, again, we're looking at fiscal year '24 budget, fiscal year '24 estimated actual, fiscal year '25 proposed budget, and the percentage change. Again, the percentage change is budget compared to budget. So on some of the larger ones, police is changing 6.7%, or 1.1 million. The majority of that is in salaries, benefits, and overtime due to the negotiated increases in the current collective bargaining union contract that's still in effect through June of next year. In addition, there's some increase for firearms and body armor. And at the same time, there were offsetting decreases in that area for lower 911 cost as, to the county as we negotiated. Fire is a 6.6% increase. 705 of that is in salaries, benefits, and overtime, again, due to the negotiated contract. But then also we have a restoration of an additional fire chief position, which wasn't in the '24 original budget. And there were some volunteer incentive program revamping and some increase in different looks at training, which is driving those costs. You look at some of the other departments, some of the other biggest changes, information technology, 19.7% change year over year. And again, that is literally maintenance costs for our softwares. Next, waste collection and disposal is an 8.3% difference budget year over budget year. And it is, again, related 100% to the new contract that we're going to have in place.
Can you help me again,
That's okay.
based on the fact that I wasn't here when these discussions occurred? Can you help me understand that? Because
Which one? I'm sorry.
waste, disposal, trash pickup.
Okay.
So one of the things we did do while I was here is spend $1 million for trash cans.
From ARPA.
Doesn't matter. We spent $1 million for trash cans. The reason is because the vendor is going to change to a trash trucks that only require one person. So they're gonna use the arm to lift the can instead of having a person put the trash in the back of the truck, which presumably should significantly lower the cost of collection. But you're telling me it's going up 8.3%.
It's gone up significantly.
Yeah.
That 8.3%,
Is there any way to
I
help
think
me
if I
understand?
recall from that conversation, primary increase is the increase in collection of recyclables,
correct.
because there's a decrease in the value for those recyclables that the hauler gets for them. So we had to make the decision to get rid of recycling or pay the freight to keep it.
Or to
So-
decrease the
So
number of
that's where
tons.
this increase is coming from?
If I understand correctly, that was
That's
the
why the
biggest.
contract went up.
Right.
It's because of the increased cost of recycling.
So like, if you wanna keep doing recycling, it's gonna cost you.
So it's not necessarily the collection, it's the disposal. On the other end, we're paying to get rid of recycling. Is
I
that-
think
is
it
that
was
what
the,
you're
I think it was the interest for that provider to continue providing that service.
telling me? Okay.
It was the trash from start to finish. And I probably shouldn't utilize the words trash in this, but I
No,
to get to there. And
that's
I
right,
do
that's right.
want to just emphasize the 8.3%. The actual contract difference is more than 8.3%. The 8.3 is the total of everything in that department. That department had $900,000 worth of expenditures included in fiscal year '24 for trash totes. That is going away and offset the increase. Otherwise, this increase would have been more. If we didn't have the trash totes in there, and we were looking, right,
Okay.
one to the other.
So-
And actually, just one more thing, the
Yeah.
contract increased even in our final year, if you remember the vendor came in. It's not just a matter of they're decreasing their staff, it's like many other employers and many other jobs, they can't recruit and retain and we're more in a payroll market where their salary costs are significantly, and benefit costs is significantly higher than they've paid in the past. More than that, just the cost overall of all of it, but recycling was a large portion. And we, yes, if we either agreed to not do recycling, it was gonna significantly reduce our costs, or if we agreed to reduce our recycling and cut in half the times that they were gonna do recycling pickup, it would help us save. But by doing that, there is a tremendous amount, and where would people put it? And would they continue if they had more recycling and, right, and you come in half the time, where am I gonna store it?
Well,
That was some of the
if
considerations.
recycling were deleted, it would be the same thing that happened in the town of Ocean City, when they deleted their recycling program about 2.5, 3 years ago. And, it's either a decision that a homeowner makes to go to designated recycling sites, or it goes into the stream of, trash. Having said that, it sounds like the decision was made, which I'm not asking to relitigate this, but I wanna be able to answer the question if somebody asks me. The decision was made to retain recycling, and that's driving this,
It's one of the factors.
one of the things, but it sounds like it's one of the major things that's driving the increase in the line item, whereas I would have anticipated a decrease in the line item from the change in the way that the vendor is now going to be picking up, and therefore we bought $1 million worth of trash cans.
Well, but
So,
they
that's-
also were buying the new equipment, so they have new equipment costs, I mean, inflation, they,
Yeah.
that, it is not unique when you look at our contracted services line. And again, we mentioned briefly on the information technology, the percentage increases that we are seeing in software maintenance costs, it's skyrocketing, right? The same is true for these contracted services, because just as we see
Yeah, I
and
think it's
have
like
seen.
40%,
Right.
to where
Yeah.
before it was like 10.
And at one point in time, it was a service of the city without charge, right? I mean,
Been a long time ago.
a long time ago, but it was one of the selling points. Okay. I'm just trying to understand, so,
So, so if
because I can imagine that call's coming.
Okay, well, just remember 4.9, and then we'll look at later how much every penny on the tax bill generates to see what that would look like. if we
All right.
Absorb that. Last but not least, the uncollected expense category is 11.7% growth, and it is reflective of the additional increase that is going to economic redevelopment for Invest Hagerstown funds, because we do just about 3 cents of the assessed value is set aside and restricted for the Invest Hagerstown. We flip the page, unless there's any other questions. We flip to page 40. You're gonna say, Michelle, it's expenses, we just looked at it. Proposed budget for fiscal year 25 is at 63.1%, 63.1 million, excuse me, or 3.3%. And I'm gonna say yes, but we're looking at it in different categories. So here, you're not seeing the individual categories for area, you're seeing how we're spending it, right? So at the top, we got wages and benefits, 38.6 million. So again, if we think about property tax revenue, it was growing, and it was growing to 40.3. We are also growing at the rate of 7.1%, which is higher than our growth rate on our real estate tax side. And that's largely, again, we have existing union contracts in place for all 3 of the collective bargaining groups that are maintained in the general fund. The only collective bargaining union, I'll just mention this, that is not in place and is currently being negotiated for fiscal year 25 and
That
future,
expires on June 30.
2024, sorry, is IBEW, and that's electric, and they're not mentioned here because they're all within the electric fund. So all the other costs for salary increases and what those charts and salary tables look like, we already know. So it's included in there. The minimum wage increase that occurred and went to $15 an hour is in there. We've also included a 3% COLA for non-union group and an adjustment for one of our steps that we created years ago. The benefit side is an 8.1%, and it's something that we are going to talk about probably, so everybody can reiterate this back to me, but on the employee benefits side, what we are seeing in the general fund, police and fire pension, we are going from 14% contribution to 16% contribution of base salaries. That is big. It's not a 2% increase, it's an increase of 14%. State of Maryland, we are going to 11.97. That is mandated. That is not something that we get to pick. That is mandated every single year and is driven by the state of Maryland. Health insurance, our health insurance premiums for our employees have not changed since July of 2010. 14 years. The city of Hagerstown, so what happens with our health insurance, we're a self-insured plan. You either, when the health insurance costs accumulate to a point where you can no longer afford them, you have to make changes to the plan itself in the health insurance plan, change deductibles, change co-pays, change a variety of things. I won't get into all the health insurance things. Or the city has to absorb 100%. And I'm going to tell you the story as you look through, based on the double-digit inflation and trends that we are seeing in health insurance, and that CBIZ, our benefits consultant, sees in the market overall. We cannot, the city of Hagerstown cannot continue to afford to absorb it at that level. So just,
Is there any co-insurance in our health insurance program, self-funded program?
insurance.
Like, an insurance that would be like a catastrophic insurance or a cap by an actual insurance company?
We have stop loss, 250,000 per occurrence.
Okay, okay.
And in the past, we might had 1, 2. And keep in mind that stop loss is for active employees, but also for retirees on our plan.
Okay.
How long did you say it's been since the?
14 years.
14 years.
2010.
But every year you do an analysis of the self-insurance program,
CBIZ does that, the
Well,
consultants and the actuaries, yes.
you, the collective you.
Yes,
Yeah.
and what they do is they come back and they say, okay, based on all the costs and all the trends, they do not include in things that we pay out of pocket, like the monies that we put over into our OPEB plan. There's certain things that we do unique. And what they do is they look at those trends and they say, here's where we're at. This is what a premium would be. We know what the employees pay, the rest is the city of Hagerstown. We move all of that money over into the health insurance fund on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Um,
We're gonna
so-
come back to that, you said, right?
Yes. So wages and benefits, again, is the single largest, they're at 38.6% of the 63.1. It is 61.2%. 61.2% of all of the expenditures in the general fund are salaries and benefits. Number 2 is contracted services. And then tied for 3 is material supplies and utilities, which has a lot of information and a lot of expenditures. And that's tied with the capital transfers to other funds. The salaries and wages, I will say, again, we mentioned about the contracts that were already settled in place. In section 1, further back, or before here, page 18, previous to this page, on page 18, there was a salary chart that was just like a 5-year history that told you what was increased for each area, so that you have some idea, so you could see the difference for each group. Contracted services, $1.2 million increase, or 19.1% in fiscal year 25, more than 24. Again, growing cost of the trash and credit card fees. So, you know, the great news is Invoice Cloud is growing, and we're really wanting people to pay online. The more people that are signed up, the more we are having increasing costs on credit card fees. A lot of people are. This is offset by decreases in one of their grant consultant studies, decreases in contractual staffing, and decreases in ground services.
Michelle.
Material supplies and utilities
Michelle.
is,
The credit card fees,
yes.
are they able to be passed on to the consumer?
So that's one thing that we have looked at in the past.
That's
And
very
we haven't,
common.
we haven't always received the same answer, but right now, when we first implemented Invoice Cloud, I almost said IntelliTime, I apologize. When we first implemented Invoice Cloud, what we did, because if you pay by phone, there's a fee, and we left that fee in place. And we decided that we were not, with Invoice Cloud, going to assess a surcharge for processing, because we were encouraging people to go that route.
What, do we know the amount of the credit card fees? Is it in here
It's a-
somewhere?
It's
Buried?
a couple $100,000.
And while she's looking that up,
It's a couple $100,000.
the issue we would have with being able to charge convenience fees is the fact that we were processing directly through a merchant bank processor directly. The county, for example, will do like a 2% surcharge if you try to pay a bill there. It's because they go through a third-party vendor that then deals with the merchant bank.
Right.
So that's the difference. We cannot, as a government, charge a fee if we are dealing directly with the bank versus having to pay a third party to apply the fee that then goes to the merchant bank.
So for instance, one thing that I know upsets people, speed camera. The city of Hagerstown does not bill those.
Right.
The city of Hagerstown does not collect the monies for that. That is all done by our third party. They collect that, and
Right.
they do charge.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll say the same thing I said when we initiated this, is you either decide you want to absorb that for the convenience of the payer, or you want to embrace the inconvenience of the fee, and more importantly, the uncertainty
Right.
of that collection process.
Sure,
Yeah.
I was just curious. I'm not saying we
Yeah.
should implement a fee, I was just curious.
As in,
It's a little over $400,000.
you mean uncertainty as in,
It's gotta go through multiple hands to ensure that the payment has been received, settled, and accounted for. And no differently than, that type of ticket process, you know what I mean?
yeah.
You're placing that responsibility on another party without being able to levy the certainty that it's occurring in the fashion that you want it to.
Personally, I think it's more of I think of it more from a philosophical standpoint, in that I think it's better to absorb the fee and account for the fee in the cost. Much like if you go to a restaurant and you pay your bill with a credit card, there's not a line that says, well, some places do, but generally there's not a line that says, credit card fee and then tip and then whatever. I mean, it's rolled into the cost of doing business. And that's my preference, because I think from a philosophical customer service standpoint, it does promote what you're talking about, which is it makes it convenient and it's there and you don't feel like you're being nickeled and dimed and so forth. But it adds up.
It does.
It's something I think that, obviously we need to consider in the overall cost of whatever that service is, as opposed to just making that a general fund expenditure,
Forgive me for asking this, it's been a long time since I've set mine up, but I know a lot of places are going to where they'll charge a fee if you want a paper bill. Are we doing that?
No.
So.
We
so-
do not charge a fee.
Well, so I would say that seems to be the standard now. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but to get a paper bill versus paperless, I know that that's been a common trend I see.
And I even asked Beth and Scott about reducing, if you didn't get a paper bill, like reducing your bill, and we're checking into the logistics of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be cognizant that 17% of our population, and I don't, you mean that, you know, individuals in this population segment, you know, aren't attuned to paying their bills in that manner, but, you know, I think of my neighbor down the street who's 92, I mean, they enjoy getting that paper bill and accounting for it the way they've accounted for it for 60 years. I would not entertain charging, you know, that individual to receive that paper copy.
Right. Oh, no.
No.
But by the same token, revenue is still revenue, and anytime you decrease revenue, you have to make that up somewhere, especially in utilities. It
And we have
becomes
to
a
be
little-
careful because you cannot discount a rate on the utilities.
Right, without,
But what we could is once or twice a year, do a promotion or an incentive, right? So many people sign up.
and we do still offer the discount if you pay your property
On
taxes
taxes,
within,
yes.
if you pay your property tax in July.
Yes.
You do get a discount. And the
People
year we
like
talked
that.
about
Do not do that.
taking that away.
I would never
even though
recommend
it
that as your
was
finance person.
maybe $5, the firestorm was swift, and that immediately was taken off the table.
And if
So-
not a fee, I mean, the paper bills are an expense that adds to this figure. So if we could encourage folks who can,
Right.
you know, Kristen's example is a good one. There are people who certainly like that and are used to that, and that's the way that they do it, and okay.
Yeah.
But if we can encourage to cut costs
Right.
in any way, if it's a small incentive, and I'm sure if we can be smart about it, the incentive
Yep.
could be still less than what we're paying in expenses to print the bills.
That's something we'll talk about.
Yep.
We'll kick around with.
Thinking.
Well, I think that a compromise would be this, you know, is, you know, your expectation is you receive a bill and you pay it, you know, by a specific period, right? So, like, for me, the cost associated with that would most rightly occur if an individual got past that period and then made a determination to pay past that period in that manner. Which is common when that happens, you know, when you say, okay, you know, I was on vacation and I didn't, you know, pay the car payment or whatever. And you call in or whatever, or you get online and say, if you wanna pay this, you know, in this direct manner, past this period of due, then, you know, that nominal fee is added. Versus placing some type of fee or removing some type of convenience for that ratepayer that's paying in the period of time allotted.
I would imagine your neighbor pays on the day that he gets the bill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that generation, I mean, that's the way that,
And that's the way people pay property taxes for the most part, too.
right, and I would, as time goes on, it will be so much more common to pay bills online, right? So whether
Yeah.
it's not now, but I think that eventually that is the, you know, the way of the future, so.
The other
Yeah.
thing I think we have to consider though is, and I know we're not a bank, but I would imagine there's a lot of similarities because the federal government just came down hard on bank fees. I mean, really billions of dollars in the country. So, I think that's something that we probably ought to be at least aware of, so not to slip into that kind of situation.
And I think I'm mentioning one of the good reasons to actually have such a great conversation around the credit card fee, the transaction fees that the city is absorbing is just that.
Yeah.
I think for the people who pay anything online, even if you have something late and you're calling over the phone, there is always a fee. And sometimes it's, you know, two, right? It's their charge plus your credit card fee charge. So I think people are accustomed to that. So our incentive for them to pay wireless, like to pay, not paper, is that we aren't charging them that fee for now.
Sure.
Right.
And the only other thing that I would say is discounts to go paperless doesn't necessarily mean just because somebody signs up to go paperless that they pay their bill. You would like to think that that happens, but,
You see, I would think the opposite would be true. And
no,
I'm a
I-
different generation from Councilman Schindler, but if I don't get that piece of paper in the mail,
Ugh,
and I don't get reminded that the bill is due, unless it's some kind of ACH or something, it may or may not happen. So it's different.
We have
Different
such
way
a,
of thinking.
such a wide range of customers, so we're trying.
Well, I just, for every one of these conversations, I put it in the context of what's it costing me as a taxpayer. You're telling me $200,000, right? So you're telling me
Credit
two-thirds
card
of one
fees for
penny.
over $400,000.
So a penny.
Little
So
over.
basically, I'm paying a penny roughly, right, in my tax rate,
Yes.
$20 a year to have the convenience of choosing one of the variety of items of ways to pay without being charged to do it.
Yes.
So I guess I just look at it that way and go, okay, I'm basically being paid charged $1.50 a month to have the convenience of paying 6 different ways to pay the bill.
You break it down like that, it's just.
But I mean, is it worth it
it's
then?
such a
I mean, that's
10-minute
how you have to
conversation.
do it.
You should say this takes.
I mean, that's
so we don't
seriously,
take
that's
10 or
how we
15
do it.
minutes.
That's how
Just
we
break
have
it
the
down, break it
discussion.
down early, so we don't have 15 minutes of discussion.
So this discussion's taken a little bit longer. Are we okay with continuing?
Michelle,
Or we could
I can
continue
finish,
on.
I can finish on this page
It doesn't
and then
matter to me.
cut here. How is that, how is that?
Then we'll pick it up next week.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Professional development,
Not next week.
yeah, the 23rd.
23rd.
Next time we meet. Professional development, 17.7% higher. Again, this is increasing. One of the things we're doing is looking at doing some different things, especially in fire with training as well. Debt service, 9.6% increase, and that is literally the increase on the 15.95 million that we're anticipating we're gonna have the bond issue for the field house. What we will do is, I'll take any other questions, but we will stop here. And then when we can reconvene on the 23rd, we're gonna have a brief discussion on budget. And what we'll do is maybe we'll highlight, I'll come into section 2 in the general fund section. And I'm gonna point out a couple of pages so that you can see navigation, where you can see some more information. And then we're gonna look at unallocated expenses on pages 65 and 66, talk about general fund CIPs. Then, as part of the actual discussion, they probably don't really know this, but as part of Eric's discussion on parking rates, we will go ahead and plan to have the parking financial projections section so that we can actually look at budget numbers in context to the parking rates.
parking rates.
And do the same when Nancy has the discussion on the 23rd
Big
with
topic
water
of
and wastewater, so that you can see those. So that's a lot of budget to cover. The budget topics might not be, they're gonna be out of sequence, and it's not gonna be all just general fund. But hopefully, on the 23rd, we can finish with the general fund, and then on April 30th, we're gonna have, we added a meeting, so between April 30th and May the 7th, we can cover the majority of all the other funds. Intro the ordinances on May 7th, and then on May 21st, just wrap up with any other lingering questions or issues that have been brought up that needed to come back and be readdressed.
One last quick question, I'll try to make this a yes or no, and
That's
then we
okay.
can come back. I'm back on page 38, under your revenues, intergovernmental revenues line that's there. Does that include, there's an amount of money that is collected by the county in their property taxes that they then revert back to the city? I think it's referred to as differential.
No, there
Is
isn't.
that is that in there?
No, so anything that the county would be passing on to us would be under income and other taxes. So the income and other taxes
Income and other
is
taxes,
either
okay.
coming from state shared something or something through the county. But there is no county differential of any kind or nature that comes back to the city.
Right.
That
And
stopped in
that's an
fiscal year
important-
'09.
That's an important piece, is that the
There is
differential
no-
is a discount on the bill to the taxpayer, to the
So they
county.
just don't collect it at all?
That's correct. Because those are services that they are not providing that are duplicative to what the city provides,
Okay,
So,
for the most part.
okay, thank you. I know we need to move on.
that's okay. So just jot this down. Section 2, page 10. You can see a little bit better outline on intergovernmental revenue.
Okay.
And we'll touch base on that next time too.
okay, ready?
Thank you.
We'll also have the test for everyone that you have to pass before you.
All right, well,
Make it
Michelle,
multiple,
stay right
especially
there.
when you get multiple choice.
Next, overfill customer service position, Michelle Hepburns, Chief Financial Officer, Beth Everhart, Support Services Manager.
Hi, how are you? Picked a good night to come. All kinds of good discussion.
Yeah, all about you.
So Beth, thank you for being here. We have a unique opportunity, one that we typically don't ask, but with gearing up, some of you may or may not know, April is a bit of a busy month downstairs, right?
I
Just a
know.
little. So in the
Sure
midst,
is.
in the midst of terminations, restores, also working on tax sale, gearing up for that whole process. In the middle of this, we are also trying to be ready and prepared for a move from this building and physically be over in the City Hall Annex, which is at 32 North Potomac. And have had a long tenured staff have a better opportunity all within the city of Hagerstown, so that's great for her. But in conversations with Beth, one of the strategies I have asked, and one of the things I would like to ask this group is, can we go ahead while we're filling this full-time position and overfill it by one? If Beth is able to find 2 qualified people, so that that second person can help train. We have another staff member who's ready to retire. and-
27th of September, 30-year employee.
And probably at least one other one who is probably seeking other opportunities as well. So if we were able to hire 2 at one time, because you have how many full-time staff right now on your front line?
4.
Ooh, goodness.
4. They do it all with 4. So, would you like to share any?
Well, I brought a little chart.
Does that include the one that transferred on March 25th?
There's 5 typically.
5, yeah.
So what we would ask is if we could find a person, we would temporarily make it 6. And when the person retires or someone else leaves, we'd be back to 5. But go ahead, Beth, just some quick numbers.
Well, in the past year, we have increased the IVR payments, so we had 24,000, which is 13%. But where we're struggling right now, post-COVID and during COVID, it started, we had, in the past year, 70,300 emails coming into customer service. Somebody has to respond to all of those. And that takes time, and they're not just a simple question. They can be, I need this, I need that, and it takes time. We are still servicing over 25,000 walk-ins a year, which is a lot of people walking in, paying bills or asking questions or setting up service, and 58,500 phone calls in a year.
I mean, I have been there. I've seen it. I've sat there with you, and that was at a full staff probably at that point in time. So I understand it, support.
Actually, perfect timing in this breakdown. I think it helps with the conversation we had previously on the choices. Whether people are paying online, people who need that paper copy to come in person. These stats kind of back that up.
And we only have 4 full-time employees.
Okay.
And 1 part-time. And I would say that my part-time person is back in the hospital again, and I'm not sure that I'm not sure how long Linda is gonna be here, and we still have
Be
2
employed.
floaters. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 2 floaters, and, they float to other areas, so I don't have them at all times. So right now, I'm in a bit of a bind. And it would be great if I could go ahead and get them trained, that way when my full-time 30-year employee retires in September, I'll at least be a little ahead of the game.
Yeah, I understand.
Roughly 4 months of duplication,
Right,
4 or 5 months.
and it's a job that it
Or less
requires.
than a half a year.
Yeah.
And
every-
hopefully
every
a kiosk, because that helps.
Well, we were working on the
I
kiosk
know.
today,
I
Yeah,
know.
yep.
and it works beautifully.
And technology is wonderful, coming from, me, and I know what you do.
And us now.
But we still service a population in an urban environment that still makes sure that on this particular day of the week, or at this particular day of the month, they come to City Hall, they pay their bills. And that's always gonna be a necessity to have. And that crew downstairs does just a heck of a job.
Phenomenal job.
Agreed.
Are we okay with this proposal?
So we'll have it on the agenda for the regular session vote on the 23rd, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank you.
Next up, Community Health and Safety Works, grant application, Brittany Mendez, Community Engagement Officer.
Good evening now. So we have an opportunity to apply for a grant program, which we've never applied to before. It's called Community Health and Safety Works through the Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm not sure if you are aware, but Market Walk, which links Franklin Street over to where Hub City Brewery will be, and also the adjacent alley at Weller's Alley, was a bit of a dicey situation last summer. Last fall, staff met with the post office, the owner of the new Franklin Apartments, Broadax, and Hub City Brewery to kind of come up with a game plan. What you'll see behind the memo is kind of a draft of plan concepts for that space, which includes design, lighting. We, as the city, do not have any money allocated for this project, so we are planning to apply for 2 different categories under this grant. So we can apply for up to $100,000 there are actually 4 categories. This project fits 2 out of the 4. So we are planning to apply to the community placemaking, and request $100,000, and then the cameras, lighting, and related safety services. So those are the 2 categories. And as I stated, there are 4 categories, but this project specifically fits 2 out of the 4. So with your approval, I plan to move forward with applying. The deadline is at the end of this month. So,
I think it's awesome. Yeah.
Is there
I-
a match?
no, there's no match required for this.
That's awesome. I'm fine with it, Brittany.
Yeah. Hopefully this will deter some of the activity that happens.
Yeah.
That is the goal.
Part of the goal.
Yeah, HPD has been great with when problems arose last summer, trying to find a solution. We are actually moving forward in the next few weeks with a temporary solution, because this, who knows when we'll get awarded this. So staff, engineering and I have been working relentlessly, and finance as well, trying to find funding and trying to find a temporary solution. So you'll see pictures of that hopefully within the next month. It's just temporary, and then hopefully we get this funding and can move forward with this, so.
Is there any kind of formal approval that's required? Because, well, I guess our regular session.
Regular session
Yep.
gives time.
Mhm.
She can get the things, she can get things in progress.
Yes, I basically just am looking for a nod of approval, and then at the regular session, you'll formally approve it, and then if we are funded, if we receive the grant, then we'll come back for approval of that.
Yeah.
Understood. Sounds good.
That's 3.
All right, thank you.
And while she's sitting here, before she goes, the event yesterday for the eclipse was
That was great.
Oh my gosh,
outstanding.
my comments.
I know, she's sitting here, so do
Don't
it.
leave.
I am staying because.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Jim's
Yeah,
last
you're
one.
right.
All right. I hate when people, you say good things about people and they're gone.
I'll be
Yeah.
here, I'll
Okay.
stay. Thank you.
That's funny. Okay, next, proposed community development block grant, CDBG annual action plan amendments, multiple years to reconcile CDBG activity budget. Joe Thompson, Director of Community and Economic Development, and Margie Joe, Community Development Manager. Hi.
Hello. So yes, we are presenting some proposed amendments covering multiple years of the CDBG action plan. Generally, about once a year, our department comes before mayor and council to present proposed amendments to CDBG. Because annual budgets are set in place well before the fiscal year begins, occasionally adjustments need to be made due to changes in planning or in funding. So in the last several months, our team has done a deeper dive to review lingering aged activities. This is in order to clean up our federal software portal and to close out older program years in order to reconcile with Munis, the city's accounting program. This facilitates a cleaner budget preparation and will create a better standard for auditing purposes going forward. We're bringing these items forward because HUD requires public notice period for significant amendments, of which some of these are. So to do this requires us to cancel or call complete several activities that date back to fiscal year 2015. The majority of these projects were either never initiated, were duplicated in subsequent action plan years, or are considered complete per the scope of the original activity description. The funding that was allocated to these projects has already been moved over to other local CDBG program activities, and so it has already been pushed back out into the community. I do want to emphasize that removing these items does not affect any of our active programs. Most of these assistance programs are funded in the plan year over year, and we don't anticipate any changes to that practice. So we see no impact to the community in the delivery of our programs. HUD requires a 30-day public comment period, which will begin ASAP after this session. So we'll be requesting approval at the May regular session after the full 30 days has passed. So, we're happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Just in general, I can understand, you know, going back to prior fiscal years, especially 10 years ago, and basically just, when you say budget canceled, just kind of lining that out, right? I mean, it's zeroing that out. I don't understand that for the current fiscal year. So there's 3 in the current fiscal year, right? Wheaton Park enhancement, which I'm not sure, first it says reduced from 250 to 100, and then it says balance canceled. And then the Hagerstown Police Athletic League, declining the grant, again, 20,000 balance canceled. And then the activity of the rehabilitation program was canceled. So that's a reallocation. So I guess my question is, why aren't the other 2 reallocations?
That is a good question. We're sort of looking to kind of balance out what has been done in previous years, where some items might have gone over budget, other still approved programs, and just kind of like trying to clean up for auditing purposes.
Yeah.
With the current, well, we do have the allocation, the reallocation. That one is primarily, because it's a loan program, we're not seeing a lot of loan applicants right now for, because everybody wants the grant. So we would rather move that money into a grant program instead of it sitting there where nobody wants it. The public service.
Yeah, but when it says balance canceled, I assume that means that you're telling the federal government where this money comes from is, we're not gonna use this money. Or we haven't used this money and we're not gonna.
We haven't found a place to reallocate it to just yet.
And also, it's a cash reconciliation, so we're reconciling cash and the Munis records with the federal portal.
Okay.
And so, excuse me, all of the entitlement monies that have come into the city are there on a cash basis and will be pushed out into the community. This is a reconciliation cleanup project.
So is the question, are you actually pushing funding back to the federal government?
No.
No, it's staying, it's
In the
staying
current,
with the
and I'm only asking about the current fiscal year. I mean, I understand the previous fiscal year, you're doing basically audit entries, you know, your credits and debits and fixing everything, that's fine. But I don't understand the current fiscal year.
If I could, so some of the breakdown is, in the federal software portal, it's a standalone system, it doesn't, not a lot of people have access, right? And so, as they build their budget and they do their initial annual action plan and it's approved, then they go in and fund the activity, it's called an activity in that system. And then what happens is, as departments or others need funding for things, and they say, hey, Margie, hey, Jill, for CDBG, this would be a great CDBG initiative. Can we have money? We say yes, right? So all of the prior is absolutely that, just cleaning up that portal, because at some point over the last 10 years, all of our entitlement money has been reallocated, it's been elsewhere. We just didn't stop long enough to change the portal on the federal side. But because of the dollars amounts that's there, we have to do this public notice. The current year items, we're not giving any money back to the federal government, we're not decreasing the amount that they gave us, but we've done other things with that money. That's the reality. We've done other initiatives here at the city.
CDBG eligible.
Right.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Yes.
And it's not that that money was utilized specifically for something at the city, but it was utilized in the community. We did more home emergency repairs, we've done other things, but there is nothing here that's going back or being returned.
So I think that might help clarify your question, Peter. Or ask another question for me, but is, for example, this one for Wheaton Park, if you look at the first one from FY '24, you're reducing the amount of CDBG funds. Originally it was gonna be 250, then now it's 100, but that extra, say 150,000 is just being used out of a different fund to pay for it then,
God bless
correct?
Thank you.
Yes, so we have, one of the things is I have ARPA dollars. The money from CDBG does not have the ultimate deadline of December 31, 2024, that I have been pushing departments. And we did try to get another federal grant through the CPF to help pay for the second phase of Wheaton Park. So what we did was we said, we'll keep some of the money here for CDBG, that's $100 grand, and Jim, we'll go ahead and allocate 250 from ARPA. And I think the last time that we were here, and if you go back to the chart, we should have had 250 there. So right now, we're gonna have up to 350 for the plan and the design, which, I don't know if Jim's still here. The design's moving forward now, two separate, right? A landscaping, architectural design person and a regular one for the actual structure. So that project is moving forward and is being funded, it's just being funded in a different manner. But also the difference between a 250 to 100, that 150 isn't lost to CDBG in our community, we still have it, it was just spent in other ways. and
It
places.
probably, at least for the current year, would have been better, and maybe you want to add kind of where those funds then were reallocated to. Because when you just say, under, for example, public service, police athletically, $20,000 balance canceled, I think if you're going to publish this, that looks to everybody else, including me, like you're just giving back $20,000. You're saying, no, it got used in another activity, that's fine, it probably should be articulated, that's all I'm saying, because I was confused. I think I understand what you're saying now.
I get CDBG jargon too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, council members, for bringing that up, because I saw that Wheaton Park canceled, and I had concern, because
Yeah.
we still have work to do. So, thank you
Yep.
for that clarification.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more
Thank you.
questions?
And the vote will be in the next work session?
It will actually be at
We have a
the May
motion.
Oh, we have
regular
a-
session
that's
because
right.
of the 30-day public comment period.
May.
So if we do receive any comments in that time, we'll bring those back to work session to present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Public Art Grant Agreement. Storied Playscape near Park Circle, Jim Bender,
Bender
City
being
Engineer.
part of it.
Good afternoon. So some good news. Last year, we applied for a grant from the Public Art Across Maryland program. And this is for our work that was going to be installed near the Clara Barton Memorial, in that same triangle down there where Summit Avenue and Virginia Avenue come together. Excuse me. We were not successful last year in getting the grants, but Brittany reapplied last fall for the grant, and we just got notification that we were awarded the money.
Nice.
Nice.
So $30,000 is coming from, or is available from the state to do this artwork. In the FY '25 budget, we had allocated an additional $20,000 of city funds so that we can get to the $50,000 that the artist thinks it's going to cost to do the work. So really, I'm just here today to, I guess, get a nod of the head or get some indication from the council that, yes, you do want to accept this money. And then we would bring back a motion at the regular session to do that.
Accept money? Definitely. We will accept the art money.
Councilman Alshire are good with the piece of art?
That's not in this discussion.
Down that rabbit hole.
We're not talking,
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you know.
Okay, city administrator comments.
All right, I'm not gonna steal any of your Alston, because I know what you're gonna comment about, and I know what you're
told
gonna
you.
comment about. So I won't steal your thunder there.
Thank
I do want, Beth had mentioned one of our employees is back in the hospital. I want, tell Lynn to take care of herself. She's my bingo partner on Thursday nights, and, she's been here a long time, 40-plus years, full-time. She retired, went part-time. She needs to start taking care of herself, and I'm thinking about her, and, we all love her downstairs, so. That's all for me.
All right.
Me?
Yes, Councilmember McIntyre.
I just want to congratulate the Hagerstown Youth Council on an extremely successful Charge for Change 3K event on Saturday. It was awesome to not only see the youth so involved and excited, they were, but the vendors that were there, the organizations that contributed to being there. It was windy and quite chilly. Staff were there, ran in front of me, Margie, Joe. But anyway, she was a nice steady pace too. But even more so, well, maybe not more so, but Rachel Paul just does such an excellent job of getting everyone together. And she just, you can tell she's just delighted to be a part of the youth council and is doing amazing work. In that regard, I think that it would be helpful if the youth council would present to this council on a regular basis as to what they're doing and what, how we can help. I think that I've looked at other municipalities and in particular one that actually even has a youth representative on the planning commission, to where they are truly, truly involved in some of the boards and organizations. And I've passed along the information to Rachel and to Scott. So hopefully there can be some other participation to get our youth more involved in their own community. So they will not be the people that are paying their bills from paper eventually, and we will need to hear from them on a more regular basis. So if we could maybe try to figure out how to implement that, maybe talk to the mayor and see about her agenda. So otherwise, great job. I look forward to other future 3Ks without stairs. That actually was a thing. That happened. That's it.
Councilman Perini.
Thank you. Just briefly, I'll say yesterday was sine die, the last day of the Maryland legislative session for 2024. So I wanted to give a shout out and thank you to Hagerstown's delegate, Brooke Roseman, who is always looking out for the city and our citizens. Also, specific thank you to Senator Quarterman, who was instrumental in helping include in the budget funds for the Hagerstown Water System Infrastructure Study. So we appreciate that. That's all I have.
Councilman Alshire.
Sure. So I attended the Smithsburg Mayor and Council meeting last week after our meeting here. And staff, meaning Scott and Nancy, did a pretty good job of presenting and addressing some of their questions associated with the proposed rate adjustments, which we're going to be talking about in our budget, to the wholesale rate that will obviously impact a number of municipalities that purchase a large quantity of water from the city on an annual basis as wholesale customers. Each of them are fairly unique in how they purchase that water and then how they redistribute it and charge for it. Anyway, I know that the mayor and council of Smithsburg indicated the possibility of considering or looking into the creation of their own water utility system in lieu of the cost associated with acquiring that water at a wholesale rate and then distributing it to its customers directly from the city. I think that I was at least able to provide them some pause to that consideration and the cost associated with it versus the more economical, advantageous costs that they enjoy currently of getting it from the city. I think we were able to address questions of differences within rates, meaning the rates that customers within the city have and the customers outside of the city have, and the debt service obligations and other things that go along with those calculations. And I think that there was certainly a point in the meeting that I found interest in, which I would have interest also in exploring for the city. And that would be, you know, the city is a water service provider of 80,000 customers across the county in many different ways. The town of Smithsburg's way in which they acquire the water just simply happens to be one of those ways. But I'd like to have a conversation at some point, as they had indicated an interest in the city sort of acquiring that system. And all that would really mean is the city acquiring the water tower that's out there, no differently than the water tower that we have in various locations that serve the various zones that we serve, and acquiring the lines or infrastructure no differently than the lines and infrastructure we have both inside and outside of the city, and have managed well for the last 100+ years. And I think it speaks to that notion that the county has often posited, which is, you know, a more singular system, if you will. As I've said for the last 20 years, I think our system is about 20 times larger than all of the other systems combined within the county. So I think that this is, you know, a practical conversation to have. I think what I would stress to this body, to our customers, including those customers in Smithsburg that I expressed to the mayor and council of Smithsburg, is at the end of the day, when you do the calculations, if you add up the base rate that their customers pay for their system now and the cost to operate it, and the differential between the wholesale rate that they pay and the outside of city rates that outside city customers pay, that those customers in that Smithsburg system would actually pay less on average. And I know that sounds really odd, but that would be a function of consideration in that conversation for how the city would adapt and you know, absorb that responsibility. For me, you know, it's an enterprise fund. It's intended to be a business fund. It's intended to operate like a business. And the reality is, in all types of industries across the land, larger businesses absorb smaller businesses and continue the operations of those businesses in a profitable manner all the time. And I don't think that conversation needs to be any more complicated than that comparison. So
And this was not at a suggestion of us.
it was not. It was something
Make
that
that
they,
clear. Yeah.
that they indicated they would like to entertain after hearing, you know, the cost to proceed into that alternative direction, you know, of securing a completely independent system.
I think it definitely works for the discussion. So if you're looking for approval from two more of us, I'm one of
Yeah.
them. So,
When Nancy gets back from Eclipse, which is tomorrow, it's on her desk.
perfect.
And I didn't attend the Eclipse celebration. I'm sure it was great. I typically attend the stuff like that that's a little more boring and technical in nature. But my kids did call me at 2:30 and said, Dad, you gotta get home, you know, we're terrified, you gotta get home, you gotta watch it with us. And I got home and they were inside, you know, watching tablets and things, so it's like, thanks.
Much safer.
Yeah,
much
thanks a
safer,
lot.
Much safer.
So,
Thank you for going and bringing it back.
yeah.
Councilman Scheller?
Yeah, just one thing I want to mention, and it's something that I've heard a little bit as of late from a couple of sources. And I just want to assure the public that, you know, this administration is by sheer virtue of the way it's going to look, going to be different come November. But we are in a time of unprecedented growth and investment in the city, and I'll speak for myself, and I think this sentiment probably goes across the board here, but it is our job right now to set things up and put things in place so that we have everything that we need, the culture and everything else that we need for the next round of investment and success and jobs coming into the city. So, you know, make no bones about it, we're not resting on our laurels, and there's a lot of work to be done between now and November to make sure that we continue to enjoy the success we're seeing now. So, that was it.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to echo the Hagerstown Youth Council's event this past Saturday. I attended briefly because I had other plans, but shout out to Shelley for running. I purposely did not want to run, so I came a little bit later as well. But no, those kids are awesome, and just thank you to just opportunity for the kids to get involved. I knew a couple of those kids that are going to go really far. Actually, everyone at that program's going to go far. And I'm glad y'all are here for all the great comments too. And Brittany, for the Eclipse viewing party yesterday was nice. It was great. I brought my daughter and my mom, and I met a couple, mother and daughter. I parked at City Hall, and I met a mother and daughter walking up the street, and they had their phone, and they were like, I could see like a GPS on their phone or whatever. And I walked up to them, I was like, hey, do you need any help? And they're like, yeah, we're trying to find University Plaza. For whatever app, whatever they was using was having them going all the way up, up the street. So I was like, well, actually, I'm going there, so follow us. And they were from out of town. I was like, how did you hear about it? They said Facebook. So Facebook is working.
Where did you have people coming from, you said? Oakland, Maryland?
Oakland and Rockville.
Rockville.
It's nice.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Nice. And they gave us their Eclipse glasses, which was great because ran out of Eclipse glasses. It was 220, over 220 I was giving out to everybody. So another great event, thank you. And Jim's here. Hi. I have a suggestion. So I know I mentioned this before, but on going up North Avenue and Prospect, that intersection there is super dangerous. And I know there's markers on the corner for cars not to park. Sometimes they do park. But even with the cars behind that marker, you cannot see. And the fact that I grew up in that area, I know when to move, because I actually look at the side of the cars and see if there's any lights reflecting off the side doors, to know when to move forward. I do that, but it is very, very dangerous. Is a possibility that we can get a study done to look into that?
Yeah,
We've talked about it
actually
before.
studied that internally, a couple of times, and I think that it's always a balancing act between safety and losing parking, in that neighborhood. If we can take parking off of that side, I think that we would have a very safe situation there. I'm just not sure that the community has the appetite to do that, but I would be glad to do another study there.
And was a stop sign evaluated? At one point, having a stop sign on Prospect?
It doesn't meet the warrants, the federal warrants for putting a stop sign there. But we can take a look at that again as well, see if anything has changed.
Okay.
Even a mirror, I mean, like.
I was saying, what about a mirror?
All the
Yeah.
time. So the problem
I was gonna
that
say,
we
first
have
concern,
here, not
actually.
to overtake your comments, but is that people park in the part you're not supposed to park in. So that's one problem, but if there could even be a mirror that could see where people are coming the other way, it would be very, very helpful. I have actually brought this up before, so.
Right.
Thank you.
And there's school buses that, all of it, come across, and that
Very
street is already narrow, so, but,
Just out of curiosity, I'll touch on that project. Are you finished with the sidewalk work on North Avenue?
I haven't heard any complaints
yet.
lately.
No, they're not
I
finished.
saw construction vehicles there yesterday, so.
No, they're not finished.
Starting to ramp up, I see, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jim. And one more comment, I got a Facebook message on my personal page, asking who to email, mayor and council, because the Washington County, Human Trafficking wants to reach out to us and invite us to a meeting on May 2nd. I don't know if they saw the
They
meeting
did.
from
I
last
got
week, they
the
did?
same
Okay,
communication.
so yeah, they was gonna contact us and invite us to a May 2nd meeting. I know we wanted to have a further discussion of what they're doing,
Yes.
so.
And the mayor and I have been in contact with the local group, so I'll
Perfect.
disseminate that.
And thank you to this body for letting me be on this side of the table. It's harder
Good
than it
job.
looks.
Great.
And with-
Great job. Great
Thank
job.
you.
You do it every time.
And with that, we're adjourned.